Do you have any headphones by chance?
Hi
everyone. This is the interview for Kimberly Smith, and I'm so sorry. And she's running for a state assembly, I believe, District 80. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, correct.
So this is our Wisconsin Revolution interview. My name is Ashley Hudson. I am the Southwest Regional Organizer for the organization, and I'm here with Peter, who is also part of the organization, and he can introduce himself.
Hey, I'm Peter. I was a former head organizer for Badger District Bernie, and I'm current co-chair for the Dane County chapter of Our Wisconsin Revolution. It's nice to finally meet you in person over Zoom. But yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, great. And so, Kimberly, if you'd just like to take a short introduction for yourself, and then we'll get right into the questions.
Yeah. So my name is Kimberly Smith, and I'm running for Assembly in District 80. I am from Oregon.
Okay, great. Thank you. So yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and start then. So Peter, would you like to ask the first question, and then we'll just kind of alternate?
Sounds good. First off the bat, do you support publicly funded elections? And give us a little bit of reasoning as to why or why not.
Yeah. So I actually, confession, I had to go through and kind of do as much research because I hadn't heard of certain terms. And this is one I knew, but I didn't know like the actual term for it. So I actually don't. I realize I don't believe that candidates should use taxpayer funds to campaign. I feel like those funds could be used for something else, anything but healthcare, infrastructure, numerous things. So yes, I do not support publicly funded elections. Correct.
Yeah. All right, thank you. So the next question. I'm sorry?
Could you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. Okay, so the next question actually is, so do you favor extending the time frame to vote at the polls during elections to a minimum of 2 weeks ahead of the election date?
Yeah, I guess this gives you a very specific time frame, but I was thinking after this past election that having like a week at least to get in to vote, like how we vote now obviously doesn't accommodate people, especially people who are working, maybe like first responders or nurses where you're working a 12-hour shift. I think giving people that time to vote is important, especially if they physically want to go to the polls. But obviously there's always, absentee voting as well. But yeah, I would support that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then moving on to gerrymandering and redistricting. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about that, especially in the assembly, given how heavily gerrymandered it is towards Republicans.
Yep.
But what model or plan would you support for legislative redistricting? So,
correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that the entity, the people who decide the redistricting is the majority party in our legislature. Is that correct? So I think it's fair to take that and give that responsibility to a nonpartisan entity. I mean, I think that absolutely makes sense because, if given the choice, some Democrats may do the same thing. We need to keep it nonpartisan, keep it out of, I think Iowa, I was reading up on that. I think Iowa has a really great structure to do that. And I think that would be an answer to that question.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so on the next question. So what are your top 3 legislative priorities and what will you do to move them through the legislature?
Yeah, so one of the biggest ones right now, and it's been talked about quite a bit, is criminal justice reform. It's obviously that we need to make changes. And I think to get that started is building relationships with Republicans, because right now that is our biggest hurdle. It's not the Democratic Party, it's the Republican Party. Building a rapport. I know someone in the Republican Party who does put forth criminal justice reform bills, and I want to join in that. I want to team up and really get that done. I know it's difficult because if you are in the minority, there's not always that support for certain bills. So, yeah. Legalization of cannabis, especially medical cannabis, would help alleviate some of those issues as well. That's one I will push forward. And appropriate funding for small businesses, farms. With COVID, it's hitting them really hard. So I think getting the Republicans and Democrats together and working hard to get these small businesses, farms, and people to make it through a potential recession is going to be integral. Yeah. So those things I would press first.
Oh yeah. Actually mentioning, the recession. So in the emergence of this pandemic, a lot of people are hurting. But how would you support sort of a state level, or would you support a state level economic hardship payment? And as sort of a follow up, do you support direct payments to residents? And what would be your sort of top 5 components that you would think should be in such a bill?
So I think I would support a state level economic hardship payment, but I hesitate because I don't want to burden our future generations with a debt. I do know that we're in a surplus on our budget. I know that Tony Ebers wanted to keep some of the money going back to homeowners for a rainy day. So I think it's really possible to support these communities. So I'm okay with that. I think that's appropriate. I think that we could come up with a way to give direct payments to residents, but I think it's possible. Well, I don't know. I was gonna say unemployment, but it sounds like a couple 100,000 people are not receiving unemployment. So maybe a direct payment would be more appropriate to get the relief to individuals. I'm not sure what the holdup is on unemployment. They have not said. I don't know if you guys know the answer to that, but what do you think? Describe the top 5 components that you think we should be in such a bill. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I thought about that, but I'm not quite sure what that meant. Did it mean like restrictions to certain people, or certain people get more than others? I would say, I think that like they did for the federal, families get a certain amount, married couples get a certain amount, and if you have kids, obviously, and or any dependents. So I think that would be a component of the bill. I think that that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, wait, was that so it's my turn now. Okay. So next question is, so how will you guarantee housing to citizens? How will you deal with the financial situation of those facing eviction because of the pandemic? And what specific solutions would you propose?
And maybe that's part of the answer to the question before. When we are giving out these hardship payments, we're making sure that the landlords and the people who are renting receive the aid as well, because we can't have people living for free. I mean, somebody has to pay the mortgage. I mean, to a space. So if you have an apartment building and nobody's paying for the rent, I think it's important to give relief to those landlords as well. So I would definitely support that. I think it would be important to put forth a bill stating that you could not evict someone without, I would say, given a specific time frame, because this pandemic is going to be going on for, we don't know, to be honest. So it's hard to set a specific time to that. What's that? Yeah. Because you want to give aid to the people who are renters, but you also don't want to put out, the landlord. So that's a tough question. It's a brutal question, actually. And let's see. I'm thinking through this in my head as I go, but that makes sense to give specific relief to the landlords to make sure that they're paid, and also set a time frame that you would not be able to evict someone for, like, say 60 to 90 days. I know usually it's like 30 days. So, but it's hard. Like I said, with the pandemic, you don't know how long it's going to last. So I think, 60 to 90 days would probably would be a safe place to start. And if you needed to put in an emergency measure to make that longer, I think that would be appropriate. And also to the landlords, so they can also pay their mortgage.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. And then on to the next question. Obviously, one of the big components of COVID is our people's ability to pay for it. So the question is, will you fight for a single-payer healthcare system at the state level? And would you support single-payer at the federal level?
Yeah, I would support a single payer healthcare system at the state level. I hesitate to. I think I would disagree with a federal level. I think that it would be appropriate to accept funding from the federal government, but I believe that should be the rules and regulations should be held by the states to take care of the individual needs of the citizens. So we have control of that in the legislature and through the governor.
Okay, thanks. So the next question is sort of in the same theme, but a little different. So it says, will you pass workers' rights laws helping those who are forced to return to work, but who risk infection from COVID-19, absent the equivalent of a single-payer system? Will you push the state to guarantee medical coverage through Badger Care for those affected in this way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important, for those that have to go back to work, whether it's you work in a grocery store or you are a police officer. I think it's important to get the adequate health care for those people because they are on the front lines. And I would absolutely support Badger Care supporting those who could not afford healthcare. I think that's fair. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. Next question, we're going to sort of go to a little bit of a lightning round. You can answer yes or no, and if you need any additional clarification, you can give us that. So when I mention a policy, you just sort of indicate whether you're for or against it. So would you support the propositions outlined in Campaign Zero, which include ending broken windows policing?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Community oversight?
Yes, absolutely, yep.
Limiting use of force?
Yes, yep.
Independent investigation and prosecution of officers?
Yes.
Community representation?
Yes, yep.
Body cams and filming the police officers?
Yeah, I think that's, yeah. Yep.
Additional training?
Absolutely.
Ending for-profit policing?
Absolutely.
And finally, demilitarization?
Yes, absolutely.
Hell yeah.
Okay. So this next question is sort of in the same vein. It's a little more awkward in speaking than it is in writing, so I'll try my best to make this clear for you and everybody else here. Yeah. Okay, so there are a few parts to this question. There's A, B, and C. So in addition, please respond to the following. I will support, choose one of the following, either increasing, leveling, decreasing, or eliminating funding for the police.
Yeah, I think the correct answer for me is leveling. I had a chance to sit down with the chief here in Oregon, and we had a really great discussion. I don't think defunding is the best way to go about it. I think defunding the police, I think people grab that tagline and completely attach a false narrative to it. It really isn't about defunding, it's about reallocating funding. And what I heard from the police chief was that they really needed more support on the mental health aspects. Having mental health officers added to their staff was really, really important. So I think taking the funding that is already there and maybe even increasing it at times, depending on what the needs are, to really engage with the community and less of, those campaign zero policies that they may have, and, tackling mental health, substance abuse, because those are the two biggest things that the chief had spoken about. So I would say at least about leveling.
Okay, great, thanks. So next part of the question, a scenario. A police officer in your jurisdiction has been filmed killing someone they have stopped or arrested. How do you respond?
First, you have to denounce that. It's unacceptable. Second of all is making sure that that family is taken care of, connecting with that family and that community. Being present both physically and emotionally for that family, and holding the people accountable, the officer and the chief and the department as a whole, evaluating what their policies and procedures are. I know it's different for each department and district. It's different for state police than it is the sheriffs, and making that change immediately and not hesitating to address that issue.
Okay, and then just the final portion of the question is list other propositions regarding policing that you would fight for.
Yeah, I think that one for me was the mental health officers. When speaking with the chief, that was the biggest thing, getting those officers trained. And there was already a program happening, I can't remember where, and she said that it was really working for that department. So that would be, yeah, absolutely, that would be the first thing I would address.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Next one is a little bit of a history question. Who did you support in the Democratic Party presidential primaries this year? And through that a little bit. But yeah, who did you support for president, and when did you publicly start supporting them?
Oh, and why? Why is part of the question. Who did you support and why?
So I actually didn't support anybody. I have been really disappointed. I expected more out of the Democratic Party. We have ended up with another white male to represent us. And I felt like we needed a little bit more diversity. I feel like there was one person in particular that I regret not supporting, and that was Kamala Harris. Reflecting, it was my error, and if I could go back, I would. I felt like she was really up for the position. I've been able to watch her during Senate hearings recently, and enjoyed what she had to say. And I think it was a Senate hearing. I might be wrong on that. I feel like she was given a bad rap with certain things, certain policies she's put forth, and I probably could have investigated further and a little bit more. So, yeah, this election really has me upset with the way it's turned out. But again, I think it's the fault of people like myself who disengaged and maybe I'm trying to make up for it now a little bit. So, but yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely.
Great, thank you. All right, so the next question is, what is your analysis of the Ebers administration's handling of the COVID-19 crisis in Wisconsin, including its handling of the processes leading up to the April 7th election? And same question for the state legislature.
Mm-hmm. I've actually been really disappointed with both Governor Ebers and the legislature. This has really turned into a political issue and not a health issue. And with the April 7th election, honestly, I'm also upset with the U.S. Supreme Court, because I felt like more time was needed to get those absentee ballots in. I believe at one point we could have extended the absentee ballots to be sent in by, I think, April 13th, and they denied that. And I felt like it was important to, going back to that second, I think it was the second question, we should have so much more time to vote than one day. And I would like to have seen Governor Ebers and the legislature work together, step up, and give us a week's time. That was necessary, but they wanted to play politics. They wanted to maybe, I feel like there was this back and forth, this power grab between Evers, DHS, and the legislature. The legislature represents us as the state of Wisconsin, and I respect them very much because they are our voice. And I felt like there was just that communication breakdown, power, and it continues. You see with like the recording of those private interviews, and I just need them to let whatever has happened go so that we can move forward and address things like this, like that election, so everyone has a fair chance to go in and vote, whether it's in person or whether it's by absentee. The gridlock is killing us, and I'm not sure what to personally do about it other than do my best to be and reflect the change that I feel that we need on that issue. So, and that's my answer.
Awesome. So next question. Are you supportive of the BDS, which is Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions movement?
Okay, so I just realized I must have accidentally skipped that one, but it ties into the next one, right? And
yeah,
boycott means boycott companies that are, discriminatory or whatever. Is that correct?
It would be BDS is a movement more critical of Israel's treatment of Palestine, and so the idea would be to yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then the divestment one?
That would also be divesting in like organizations, the IDF. Ashley can clarify a little bit more.
So essentially, just
what
divestment means essentially, so people sort of, like I said, invest, divest, sort of pull their the funds that they're doing and putting into these various like companies, machines, whatnot, things that are essentially oppressing a group. Now, specifically, the BDS is well known in the Israel-Palestine discussion, but it also was a movement in South Africa as well.
Okay, thank you. And I kind of know what sanctions are. Okay. I mean, right off the top of my head, I would support that. Yeah. And I'm referencing the anti-pipeline movements and should people not be punished for those things? Yeah, I agree with that. I think that it's really important to protest. I think it's important. These are ways to hold entities accountable. Some people may not like how it's done, and I respect that, and I can agree with that. But I think it's always appropriate to have protests available and, keep it a form of speech. I supported the protests in April, and I supported the Black Lives Matter protest. I know that lots of people have a lot of emotions on both sides, but I think it's important to always give people their voice, because once they are silenced, you might be silenced. And I think it's fair that everybody has a voice, even if you don't, or even if you disagree with them. And I would absolutely support that protesters, the anti-pipeline movements should not be punished. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
People being jailed for that. And I mean, you're protecting land, you're protecting water, our environment. We eat, live, and grow off of our land, and it's important. And we should do what we can to protect it. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So it seems like you got 13 and 14 there. Ashley, you'd be next.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we'll just move on to the next one. So, so list the unions that have already endorsed you in this race, and the next part is which labor endorsements are you seeking?
I don't know if this is going to be a shot against me, but I have not been endorsed by any of the unions, and I haven't sought any yet. I think maybe one had reached out, but that was it so far. I don't have any endorsements yet at all, so that's not like, something that I guess I've been pushing to do just yet. Just trying to feel out what it means to be endorsed by certain entities. As an endorsement is a very large commitment that I take seriously and I want to honor. So when you associate yourself with someone or an entity, that means that you have to honor that contract when you're into the legislature and into the Assembly, Senate, whatever. And that's not always easy. So it means, not isolating, but what's the right word? People see that endorsement and automatically think a certain way about you. And so that's why I'm kind of hesitating. But I'm definitely open to having a relationship with unions if it's the right one. That makes sense.
Awesome. Yeah. And sort of continuing with the theme of sort of technical campaign questions.
Yep.
In regards to fundraising this time. Just going to sort of hit them rapid fire here. How much have you raised for this race so far?
Gosh, I haven't raised a lot. So I'm kind of embarrassed. It's super grassroots, individual donors. I guess I'm my biggest donor because my husband and I have put $2,500 into this campaign, along with almost, I think, $1,500 from other people. So a total of $3,000. Yeah, I am my top donor along with a couple of individuals. I don't know, am I required to give their names or?
No.
Okay. I don't have any.
The other, just to clarify, yeah, our other candidate that we've interviewed did give the name. So however we want to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather not, like, they're family and friends.
Sure.
So I'd hate to call them out.
Yeah.
So none of my donors are like entities. It's all individuals.
Yeah.
And how much of?
Can we read the questions aloud just for the sake of the, Peter, did you want to just finish?
Yes. you've already answered a few of these, but I'll just quick hit all the questions in a row.
Yep.
So yeah, how much have you raised? Who are your top 3 donors?
Yep.
What percentage of your total is from these donors? How much is strictly from small individual donors of less than $50? And if this is not your first election, well, it is, but yeah.
It is, yep, it is. So, okay, how much you raise? Who are your top 3 donors? I said individuals. So, what percentage is from these top donors? Maybe like 30% from those top donors. And almost all of it is from small individual donors of like 50 or less. A majority of it, I would say, about 1,000 at least. And yeah, if this is not my first election, I have no information to give for that last one. So that answered all of it, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So next question, and I'm not sure, you may have partially answered this before, but so the question is, so do you support the legalization of recreational cannabis, including the expungement of all previous cannabis-related charges and release of all those currently serving time for such charges?
Yeah, I do actually support all of that. I mean, you said, I think it's normal to set a certain level. So if you have a conviction of a certain amount of cannabis, and it's like at I don't know, like a pound or less. I think that's usually how that goes. I think it's absolutely imperative that we do it to not only alleviate the financial burden of our prisons, but for our communities to hold a significant portion of our population in prison is not good for it's not good for our communities. So yes, I absolutely support the legalization of cannabis and the charges and expungement of charges. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I can keep
I was
going.
going to add in a little bit, but because I realized it said recreational cannabis, and I do agree with that. But I feel like we have to get to medical first. There's a really big hurdle with the Republican Party. I know there's a lot of pushback. So I feel like if we work towards medical cannabis, I think that will be key to moving to the recreation. Sorry, my buzzer just went off. Hope that's not terrible.
No problem. Awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have one last question, and then we're all tied up here. So do you have any paid staff or consultants working on the campaign? And if so, what percentage of your campaign funding goes to the paid staff or consultants?
I think this is a hilarious question because I'm like, no, it's all me. This is what you get. I am doing all the work. I mean, I have family and friends who are, giving me feedback on ads, things I write up. My husband helped me with grabbing the data off of the Badger voter website and put it into an app so I can, go door to door. But it's all me. And I obviously haven't given any money to anybody to do that. My husband loves me. So yeah.
Okay, let me just, well, I think that's it. So, yeah, we're all wrapped up here. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for joining us. Thank you, Peter. And thank you everyone for taking the time to, check out this interview. We'll keep you updated on the endorsement process. All right, take care, everyone, and have a good night. I'm gonna hit stop recording now. Bye. Okay, let's see.